Hello, everyone, and thank you for watching us. I'm Arturo Bilia, Junior Policy and Advocacy Officer at FOGS, the Foundation for Global Governance and Sustainability. Today, I will be conducting my first interview for FOGS in a series of interviews where we are trying to invite extraordinary people who work hard and live trying to make the world a better place. People we can try to connect with our vision and FOGS' grand narrative. Today we welcome Uswa Zainab, a 15 years old vlogger and orator from Pakistan. Uswa Zainab, what does your name mean? I should probably know that, but we come from different backgrounds, so and it sounds very unusual to me.
Hmm. Thank you. First off, thank you so much for having me with you. It's an incredible honor indeed for me to have an opportunity to talk to such an agile and effective organization working towards a better world. So thank you. And as far as my name is concerned, Uswa is Zainab. So Uswa is a word in Urdu that means an example or a follower. And Zainab was basically the granddaughter of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, who was very courageous. And there was this incident of Karbala. It was a huge tragedy, after which Bibi Zainab was the one to speak in the court of the aggressor, which was Yazid, and she was the basically person to tell the world what had happened. So whenever someone says Uswa Zainab, it means I am a follower of Bibi Zainab, the granddaughter of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and it's a pray that I have that courage and eloquence in expressing my opinions.
Wonderful. And I've come to understand that you are a vlogger, orator, climate change and social media activist from Lahore in Pakistan. Can you explain us what that means and how you found yourself on the path of active citizen?
All right, so I first off started my this path as a debater. I started debating, and from there I found out that I had talents for speaking. My father was a great support. I then started a social media presence, and now currently I am a student of O levels, studying humanities and world affairs, as well as a social media activist and a climate change activist. um, I um, I have a very considerably large following in Pakistan, and I find myself as an active citizen of the world, and I am confident in saying so because I feel like I am sufficiently productive and engaged citizen. I know what's going on in the world, and I have my strong opinions on that. And also, I'm not inflexible in my opinions. If I always believe in interlocution or debates where both the interlocutors put forward their ideas and try to work towards a better conclusion. I'm never like inflexible in my ideas. If you and I are having an argument and you have stronger points, I will for sure conform to those points. So that's one of my main principles in life. am always on a mission to learn more and better stuff, and I think that's what makes me a productive and engaged citizens of the world.
At Fox, we defend a sort of moral code based on our grand narrative and exalogue, and one of the three pillars is of the grand narrative is actually global citizenship, and one of the six parts of this exalogue is active citizenship. So this is something we very much value at Fox. Anyway, and you're also a student, so how do you manage to find a right balance between school and your activism?
I think that comes from support of my parents first off, because they are very supportive. They help me find time and they help me manage my all my activities and keep my academics and co-curricular activities in balance. I think it also comes from training by my mother in time management. I'm honored in saying that I have a mother that keeps a very firm check on what my activities are. My father and my both my parents have a very strict surveillance and observation on all my activities, and they help me find time for school and then come home. There are so many other activities involved besides from actually conducting these online activities, like preparing for them and doing my research. And my father is very supportive, he helps me. So I think with effective time management and with support of parents, I'm able to cope with the challenges that come, for example, unprecedented assignments and school pressure, so all of that. And I'm able to cope with it pretty fine.
That's great. A supportive family is very important. And you mentioned that you mentioned it, but you have an impressive online presence with more than 17,000 subscribers to your YouTube channel. How would you explain such a success, and maybe what is your next target?
It's more than 6K actually, my subscribers on YouTube, and on Twitter, the following is even greater than that. And as I've said, and I'll keep on saying that because that my father is the greatest support, the greatest anchor that like keeps on motivating me to go further. And he has a very strict surveillance of my activities, as well as he helps me manage my pages because I have school and like don't have enough time to be on social media all the time. So he helps me in managing all my activities and keeping them in check. And how I would explain that, I think it is a great achievement indeed. And God willing, I will be able to go further from here. I'm also officially recognized by the government of Pakistan, and I'm affiliated with so many NGOs and organizations that are working towards representation of youth in government making policies and curbing climate change. So I would say that again, with effective time management and determination. And I always say whenever I'm on television or any other video, I say that if you have your destination clear, the path to that destination becomes clear by itself. So that's the policy that I follow: determination and discipline.
And all right, so now let's enter the real topic. Um, a very simple question to start on a very complex issue. What do you consider as humanity's biggest challenge in our times?
I think there are moral challenges as well as physical murderers. Like for instance, if we were to talk about COVID and climate change, I think there's the main similarity between COVID and climate change, and that is we can't see it. It's an invisible murderer, but we know it exists. Corona, I think people are more aware of that because 24/7 the news state the death toll, and it has very explicit death toll, and people die within weeks or even days. So I think people are more aware of Corona in this regard, but there's not as much awareness about this in regard to climate change, because I feel like there's not enough emphasis about climate change on mainstream media and social media as well. I think if just imagine a news channel if it would 24/7 start stating the death toll and the stressing on climate change, and that would spread, in fact, the panic that COVID has spread, because it was mainstream media and social media that was spreading the information. So I think these are the basic challenges that endanger the death. It's a life and death question for the people of the world, and it's like a worldwide um, uh, challenge, COVID and corona and climate change. But if we talk about moral things and things that are not so tangible, they include aggressors, and I think we're going to talk about it as well. People in being a responsive government, you need to realize what stimulus you're responding to and whether it puts another country's integrity and security at stake. And we've seen so many developments in international relations and in recent months that have there are explicit examples of one country aggressing against the other on basis of race and basis of superiority and inferiority, the concept that entails these issues. So I think international peace is endangered. I would go on to saying that, and I would say that international organizations like the UN. I think I might be making a political statement, but I would go on to say that I don't see a very active role of international organizations solving this international peace crises. And I hope that youth engagement and youth bodies, if the local youth bodies in each country, if they come together and a platform is provided for them to come together, they might be able to tackle it, because they won't be politically so biased as the official governments of countries might be. They're probably more educated, as I read on the FOG's website that there's spreading awareness, and technology has played a very vital role in spreading awareness and reducing the hunger rates of the country and reducing poverty. So I think the youth is more considerate. Youth is more reasonable in like forming out their policies. And I think if youth comes together and is included in decision making, there could be very positive impacts on international relations and its developments.
Yeah, okay. Let's focus for a moment on let's say climate change. Could you describe to us, for example, the current Pakistani government's position regarding this major issue?
All right, so the Paris Agreement, Pakistan is the 104th country to abide by it and acknowledge it. And so far, we have our Pakistani government has achieved its climate aims 10 years ago, which is commendable actually. And we're well on the road to stability in this regard. And the work that's done for environmental smog in winter months last year in December, it was done and it was appreciated worldwide. But that's when we talk about long-term spread out events, like one here in history and one there. That would be an overview. But overly, we're going well. But recent urban flooding in Karachi, I think you might know about this, because it was destructive and massive uh, destruction by urban flooding, and it was a result of climate change. Because of global warming, the sea levels were rising, and there was massive unprecedented levels of rains in Karachi, the capital of the southern province of Pakistan. And there was no infrastructure to deal with it. There was no warnings issued, and there was no active government response to that. And it was I think there were 40 more than 40 deaths, and so much destruction that people literally lost their houses and businesses, even in developed posh and infrastructure areas. So that was an impact of the statistics that we so often quote when we talk about climate change, like the temperature that has risen by zero point 0.8 degrees in the last century, the 3 centimeters that the sea levels have risen, and the dramatic melting of um, uh, glaciers. So I think this was a manifestation of these very statistics. And if we talk about 26, and this is not about exactly Pakistan, but in 2016 in Siberia, reindeer, which has died 75 years ago by a bacterial infection, was buried under ice. Global warming melted that ice, and that bacteria was again released, killing people and animals. This effectively highlights how the global warming is not only a murderer in the future, it can also bring back epidemics from the past. And that's not when I talk strictly about Pakistan, that's on a global level. But in Pakistan, in recent floods, there was no effective action taken. But if we talk about the Paris Agreement, which was a worldwide acknowledged pact on climate change, we have achieved our targets about 10 years ago, which is commendable. But it's actually kind of a paradox. And on the one hand, we achieve our targets uh, before any other country or most of the countries do, and on one hand, we're not able to cope with the internal disasters that occur out of climate change.
Yeah, that's terrible. And you mentioned the Paris Agreement. Do you think that is enough of a contribution to achieving the Paris Agreement? And we talked about Pakistan, but now let's talk more globally. What do you think about what other major countries are doing for climate change, to fight climate change?
I think when if we talk about ground realities, I think the climate change is something that suits the developed nations to be talking about, because in developing countries where everyone is so caught up in winning bread and butter for their families, there's seldom any talk about climate change, because it's not an imminent death. It's not like you can see your death lingering just around the corner. It's more like hunger is a greater challenge to local people in developing countries than climate change might be 50 years from now. So I think even if we talk about developing countries, the recent development in the recent news about America refusing to work on climate change after UN suggested it do so, because the president thought it was too much of, I think, a liability. It was too much of an expense or a cost. So I think even developed countries can refuse the United Nations, and the Paris Agreement was, if not a very effective development in this regard, it was at least a bare minimum, an existence, a phenomenon that could be acknowledged as one step on the road to eventually achieving climate stability. So I think it was at least a point raised. There were countries coming together and agreeing, but again, the point is, you might draw up agreements, but what guarantees there that the agreements will be implemented? So I think there needs to be a body that ensures the implementation of all that's discussed and all the strategies that countries decide amongst themselves. Implementation is more important than discussion, and without discussion there can't be anything. So I think discussion is very important, and then ensuring that implementation of those points is done, that's very important.
Let's talk about responsive governance that you mentioned earlier, which is another piece of the FOGS Hexalog. And you also said that you were officially recognized by the Pakistani government. So here is my question. If you meet your prime minister, Imran Khan, a renowned cricket player, but also philanthropist, in public events, and I know that you already did, what do you tell him, and what does he tell you?
So my question wasn't exactly related to responsive government. I questioned him basically on his vision of the state of Medina that he wanted on the lines for Pakistan to be built upon, which was basically an ideal Islamic state, the first Islamic state of the world. And his vision is to build Pakistan on the lines of the state of Medina. So my question was that regarding how much development has been done doing that. But again, the responsive government comes in, because without being responsive, how could he put into implementation the principles of the state of Medina? My question was that, but he gave an answer that states don't develop or form overnight, and it takes time. And I agree to that, because the state of Medina itself took many years to finally become stable and become the pioneer of Islamic expansion in the world. So if we talk about today responsive governments, I think it's a moral duty of every government to be responsive, because without being responsive, a government is not a government, right? They need if a government is not listening to public concerns and public issues and public opinions, and paying no heed to them, and not conforming to that, it's better off not being there. People might go into anarchy and take control of themselves, and we have often seen that. History tells us that when governments fail to comply to public opinions, civilians take their matters in their own hands, and rightly so. So I think history has again taught us how democratic governments mold themselves according to the public opinion, and are able to gain power. And monarchies, or for instance, say dictatorships, which are not able to comply to public opinions, they pay no heed to them, they're wiped out from government, and rightly so. So I think a government must be responsive. Its duty is in the government. A government is in the government because it needs to solve people's problems. But at the same time, we must also pay mind to what stimulus the government is being responsive to. Is it a public opinion that if just imagine a country that wants to annex the country neighboring it, and the people want mass slaughters of their neighbors, right? And this is the public opinion. Now, public opinion in itself can be a negative thing, or could endanger, could be a positive thing, or on the other hand could endanger so many lives. Now the government needs to see what the stimulus is and whether it needs to respond to that or not. If the government responds to a negative stimulus and endangers and puts at stake the security and integrity and lives of the people that are living next to the border to them, that's a responsive government in its right. But is that model? We need to take into that into account. The governments need to be responsive as well as decide whether what they're responsive to is model.
And in the situation where the government is not as responsive as we would expect it to be, we could try to find support on elsewhere. So do you feel that in your fight for climate action and the rest, you are supported by people and institutions inside or outside of your country? And if yes, which ones?
There are so many organizations, as I've previously mentioned, that are I'm affiliated with, that support me, that are doing commendable work. They're organizing seminars and events that bring youth from different parts of the nation together. People are the youth is able to discuss their ideas, and which are revolutionary and phenomenal in some matters, and also are able to provide training to them. They are not necessarily well known, renowned, or very famous or spotlit organizations. They're local bodies. They're working towards a better world. One is even if they are very famous or well known, there are Fridays for Future. That's I'm talking to a representative of exactly such an organization right now, which is FOGS. There's then YAN, which is Youth Advocacy Network. There are so many other organizations as well that I'm affiliated to. And if I talk about individuals or people that support me, they're my parents, of course, my friends and family. I think that goes for everyone. But my community and Pakistanis have a nature of supporting whatever's commendable work any one of their community does. So I think I'm supported very much from the people of my country as well as the organizations over here, and internationally by organizations doing commendable work like Fox is doing.
And you also advocate, of course, for youth inclusion in making processes. So concretely, can you tell us how can youth have an influence, for example, in the climate crisis and in other major global issues on local, national, and international levels?
I think I've also pointed this out in the essay that is published on the Kutaiko's website, that the youth of the world constitutes more than half of the population of the world, yet the global average age of a average parliamentarian is 53. This effectively highlights how the youth is nowhere a central part of the central decision making in the world. And I think there's commendable work that youth can potentially do. The only thing that is needed is harnessing of their potentials and providing them with ample training and opportunities to put their talents into action and do some tangible work. I think there needs to be a mechanism that can do it. For example, you mentioned climate change. Including myself, I know a lot of people that are very passionate and fervent about this. They have ideas. For example, my idea in Pakistan, there is a tradition that on the Independence Day, people buy these are miniature Pakistani flags and decorate their houses with that, and that's costly, of course. So I suggested them, why don't you take up that money and buy and use that money to buy seeds to plant on that day, so that this little sapling would grow into a tree that you can decorate with as many flags that you as you want, and it would have its advantages along with it. This was an innovative idea, and there was a competition held in the German embassy in Pakistan, and I presented this idea over there, and I won the competition because Germany so much has done so much work in climate change, and the German ambassador was fostering this very idea in Pakistan as well. And similarly, so there were a lot of other people with incredible ideas in that competition, and that was not recently; it was some time ago. Now, people, as technology is connecting us all and effective globalization is taking place, I think I know a lot of Pakistani people or students just like me, or juniors to me, or seniors to even seniors to me. They have incredible ideas. The only thing that they need is a stimulus, a stimulus, and incredible, effective education and training in training them to implement their ideas. They all have incredible ideas that can be very encouraging for local Pakistanis to act upon, and it could do tremendous work in tackling climate change. If I talk about national level, if I talk about international, on an international level, I think youth, just like we need a body that brings all of the youth of Pakistan into on one platform to discuss ideas. I think we need an international body, which UN is in an ideal place to do so. I want to see a UN that has a platform that regularly brings counselors. Diplomats and officials which are experienced as counselors together with the youth as representatives from all communities and societies of the world to discuss about specifically climate change, not international relations, not anything else, climate change, which is a common enemy for all of us.
So that's why, Zainab, you're a public figure with we can see strong opinions that may not be to everybody's liking. Please tell us about the challenges as a young girl in Pakistan and in the world in general to do what you are doing.
I think the problem that I face in Pakistan, along with the Pakistanis, according to their nature, supporting one little girl who's standing up, um, there are fanatics in every community, and I face criticism on my social media on perhaps my appearance or the way I dress, that I'm not completely complying to the Islamic uh, code of dress. I pay no heed to that. I just keep moving on. I take only constructive criticism into account, things that make me go towards betterment, not the criticisms that are only meant to bring me down. And I take into heed only the appreciation and constructive criticism, and I completely ignore the fanatics who just are intent upon bringing me down and weighing me down on my career and my path. And this is the problem that I face within Pakistan and internationally. I feel like being a Pakistani, Pakistan has had a reputation in the world which is not exactly true. There have been prejudices, there have been incidences, and rightly so. People think people have certain the international community has certain concerns and prejudices about the people of Pakistan, and they have certain ideas that come together when it comes to Pakistanis. We like Pakistanis might get judged on the general perception that Pakistan has in the international community, and I think that needs to be changed. I think the talent and and that's what my work is dedicated to, bringing the positive side of Pakistan. If all my efforts of on social media are to be summed up, I would say that my efforts are to bring the positive and the bright side of Pakistan out to the world, and that is the perception of acceptance that I need to see, that I want to see in the international community to Pakistanis and people who come from developing, uh, especially Asian countries. I think that's the problem that I face internationally, but with help from FOGs and similar organizations, I think we're moving towards a world that accepts and embraces all without prejudices.
And speaking of positive, we have spoken about human challenges and difficulties, global disasters, but we have to hold on to some optimism too, that things can change. There must be some positive movements or signs. Can you identify any of those?
Yes, indeed, in the hue and cry of economy, of misery, of hunger, especially in COVID, there are so many things that we overlook that get overshadowed or pushed into the back door or backseat because of more pressing issues that are certainly phenomenal in some cases and are beautiful and commendable in some manners. In COVID, for instance, what I saw in the recent 6 months of the lockdown resulting from the pandemic, there was soaring inflation and soaring unemployment, and there were people who as self-help took an initiative from their own budgets to make sure that the people who got unemployed and were in need were supplied sufficiently with rations throughout the lockdown, as they couldn't have or afford any other sources of income. A student as a self-initiative did commendable work in this regard in Balochistan, which is the western province of Pakistan. And I've seen international organizations donating and issuing financial support to countries in need and people in need. I think this pandemic, along with being a disaster to so many people, has also emphasized to an extent to the point that humanity still exists and people still care about each other. It has, to some point, brought all of the people of the world together in opposition to a common enemy, which was death or corona. So I think, as I've already said, that Corona and climate change have some similarities. And as I saw world getting the people of the different communities and societies getting together and supporting each other in, against this common enemy, I want to see a world where people from all over the world come together against a common enemy. And I think digitalization has played the main role in bringing us all together. So I think there was commendable work done. And if even if we don't talk about um, uh, providing rations to the needy, there was so much work. I think there are little things that don't make it to the spotlight, but have the world's significance in their own right. If you say something nice to a person, and if that sentence of your brings a smile to the person's face, I think that would make that person's day and yours as well. And that these are the little things that bring positivity in a state of perpetual negativity. And I think we need to pay more heed to that. We must not ignore these things as very little and not do them at all. We must at least take an initiative.
Do you think that the mainstream media has a bad influence on that, on optimism, because there might be more negative stories that are told and put on the spotlight? Is that what you mean?
Yes, for instance, see that the concept of making public opinions by what is mainstreamed or broadcasted or on mainstream TV, and along with awareness about how to protect yourself. What I saw on television channels in Pakistan, there was constant awareness: wash your hands for 20 seconds and wear a mask, and the precautions that were said. Along with that, there was a constant death toll, and there was constant reports of these many cases in one day, and like the rate of cases increasing every day, and now it's gone down, thank God. But I'm talking about, for instance, 1.5 months ago. In Pakistan, the situation is much better now, but 1.5 months ago, the cases were constantly rising, and that created a very intense environment of negativity. You know, people, if Pakistanis are very welcoming to guests, but it was a time when guests couldn't be invited. We couldn't go to anyone's place, and even if due to some necessity someone came at our place, we couldn't be as hospitable to them as we would have otherwise been. That created distances between people, even if they were literally living in the under the same roof. So I think that created negativity, yes, but this negativity had to be necessary in order to curb this challenge.
Right. And so on your YouTube channel's cover image, we can read "Positive Pakistan" with Zainab uniting the nation. I must say that looks very much like a politician's poster. Is that your plan for the future, becoming a politician and try to unite the nations, or do you have any plans at all for the future?
I certainly have plans for my future, but they're not necessarily concerned with going towards the politics. I believe with technology, you can connect hearts and you can connect people without even going to politics. Times are changing. So I'm not sure about going to politics, but I'm certainly going to go into civil services, which is a department or a field in Pakistan where you can work under the government to serve your people, and that's my main aim. Eventually I will be going into that field because it would provide me with ample opportunity to serve my people, which has been the main aim and main goal of mine, to serve the people of my country and my country in general. I think technology has enabled us to connect the nation, because everyone who's in phone is in some way connected to one main server, and that has connected hearts. I think, you can go to another country and still be able to talk to your parents. That's a blessing, and you're connected. So I think there could be one positive motto that of climate change, of any other activity that could bring so many the people, majority of people of your nation together on one platform. I think that would be connecting the nation, but not necessarily politics. I have no ambitions to go into Pakistani politics.
Fair enough. And as you already mentioned, you recently participated in an essay competition that Fox organized on a Model UN for Model World. You were actually recognized to your excellent essay, published on the Fox magazine catholicos.world by participating in an online panel with senior people from the United Nations that Fox organized with the Dice of India. We would like you to explain to us what attracted you to this competition in the first place, and in general, what attracts you to the United Nations.
So I'm a writer in general as well, and I constantly participate in essay competitions, be it nationwide or international. Before I wrote the essay to Katoikos, I won a national competition in Pakistan as well, and I constantly write in articles in international and national newspapers and magazines. And writing is one of my passions, and I think writing is a beautiful way to express myself. When I'm writing, I just I lose track of whatever's going on around me, and I get lost in the words. I think that's a very beautiful state to be in. And writing is, again, as I've established, my passion. So I got to know about this a particular essay by Fridays for Future. I learned about this on their website. Then I decided I would write on it. It was there was some complications. I had to do some research, etc. But I finally wrote it, and I didn't quite expect that I would be selected for an international competition where people from all over the world were writing. But when it finally came, it actually went like, one moment I checked my phone, there was no email. The other moment I checked my phone, there was an email from Paul congratulating me, and I was so happy. My parents were so proud, and it was a great achievement indeed. And I was appreciated in my country and my school as well. So I think I would love to see Paul's organizing constant councils and organizing certain essay writing competitions constantly over the years. So I would love to be going into that.
Wonderful, wonderful. So that's, yeah, I already mentioned the approach of Fox, that our grand narrative and the Exalogue as a moral code for a more fair and people-centered globalization in the future. Do you agree with such an approach? And most importantly, how do you think people like you and us at Fox could work together to change the world for the better?
Okay, so as I was reading the narratives and ideologies and opinions that Falls had put down in its hexalogs, I was greatly impressed, and I had a fervent desire that the people of my country would know it as well. But unfortunately, in a developing country where most of the people aren't able to read or write, or even if they have a strong grip over Urdu but not English, and so I realized that they wouldn't be able to understand the big ideologies that Fox have has in English. So I was wondering if it could be possible that representatives of FOGs would make a comprehensible video recording explaining all of their ideologies, and I would translate it to the Pakistani population that is in my following, because my particular audience is very attentive and reactive to innovative and productive stuff. So am I. So I think if this could be possible, so many people in Pakistan would be able to know what POC stands for, and what globalization means, or what so many other big concepts mean. So I think that would be great. I would love to see and I also had a suggestion. I would love to see Paul's taking out a monthly or quarterly magazine in which it puts its ideologies and its narratives on changing international relations, as well as the ideas and narratives of views from all over the world. For instance, I would write monthly to this magazine that Fox would take out, and so would any other person from any other community voicing his opinions or her opinions to Fox. And this way, globalization could be fostering the productive educational digitalization that Fox so often stresses on. I would love to see Fox organizing other councils and other platforms and Zoom meetings, for instance, where people from all over the world, youth from all over the world, come together and discuss things that are common, to discuss problems that are common to them. And there's so many other things that we could do. And I look forward to working with blogs for a better world as a Pakistani teenager in the future. God
Well,
willing.
these are wonderful, concrete ideas that we will for sure further develop with you. Outside Zainab, the interview is coming to an end. So, is there anything you would like to add?
I would conclude my words on thanking Fox once again. It was an incredible learning opportunity. Turo, you have been so helpful in organizing this event, and thank you for coordinating everything with me and providing me with this opportunity. I'm very thankful. Looking forward to a wonderful future working towards a better world with you.
Thank you so much, Outside Zainab, for taking the time to discuss with us, for your kind words all the time, for sharing such powerful and passionate ideas with us. I think nowadays, activism seems more needed than ever. I don't know, is it really, or do every generation share this feeling? It is probably not our position to say, but being involved in new community and promoting reforms at all levels, um, it's unquestionably key to building free and fair societies. The current major issues and the way we deal with them will probably be decisive for the generations to come. I do believe that we stand at a turning point where we very much need, among others, people like our guest of the day, people who stand up and raise their voices to shake the established order for a better future. Thank you again, Utswai Zanev, and please do me a favor, never give up. Before closing this session, it is also my job to remind all of you to follow FOGS on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and Patreon. And certainly do not hesitate to also follow our young social media activist, Utswai Zaneb, on YouTube and Twitter. Bye-bye.